Hello everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my weekly wrap-up of May 29th, 2016. Getting back to our regularly scheduled weekly wrap-ups and how I normally do them. Things have been a little inconsistent here recently. They'll probably continue being that way for a while because that's just the way I'm feeling. But I did read stuff this past week. I think I have about 5 things to talk about, so we're gonna get straight into that. First, I have to rewind a little bit and talk about a book that I completely forgot to mention in a previous video, and that is Nemesis Games by James S.A. Corey, the 5th book in the Expanse series, which is space opera science fiction. I read Issola Burn, the 4th book, a little while ago, and I ranted about it. I thought it had some significant flaws. It was quite a weak book in the series, plot-wise, character-wise, and specifically the POVs. 2 of them really irritated me. It was a low point for the series, and I expected Nemesis Games to be better. I was like, it has to be better. It totally was. If you have been reading this series and you were so disappointed by Issola Burn and you thought about stopping the series, I really encourage you to keep reading because this is the middle book in the series. I believe it's projected to be 9 books in total, so the 5th book is the middle. It's when the climax starts. It's when the shape of the overall story being told in the entire series starts to become clear. And oh my goodness, all of the crazy things happen in this book. This thing happens, this catastrophic event. I stopped what I was doing. I stared at my phone because I was listening to this book on audio, and I said, "Oh shiitake," like out loud, like there is no coming back from this thing, and I am so excited to see what happens in the rest of the series. The other great thing about this book is that all 4 point of view people, because there are always 4 in all of the books, are the crew of the Rocinante. Holden, the captain, is always a POV, but now you have Naomi and Amos and Alex, and they are separated. They are very disconnected from each other for most of the book, so they're having their own stories, their own adventures, which do tie in together, but it gives you so much more backstory on where they came from, and there are major revelations about a couple of the characters that had me pretty flabbergasted. If you can't tell, I really like this book. I give it 4 stars. It's a very high 4 stars, like maybe 4.5. And this is a book that I think I will come back to after I've read the 6th book and I have a better idea of how a Nemesis Games fits into the overall story arc better. I may revise my rating and I may bump it up. Like, it's pretty unusual for me to bump ratings up. I usually decrease them once I've had some distance, but I've already had some distance from this book, and I'm still thinking about how much I enjoyed it and how much I was entranced by all of the things happening in it. Next is The Vorrh by Brian Catling, a book that pretty much everyone who has read it has told me it is weird, good, but weird, and difficult to decide whether you actually liked it or not. And I am also in that camp now. The Vorrh of the title is this deep, dark, ancient, primordial forest, probably in Africa. It's rumored to have the original Garden of Eden inside of it, and if you spend too much time in it, it changes you, it eats you, or it steals your memory, that kind of thing. There is one storyline about a man with no memory who is trying to traverse the heart of the Vorrh for the 2nd time. And people want to stop him from doing this because if he does, he will gain some sort of power or knowledge that they don't want him to have. Another one of the storylines is this hunter who is after him. Then there's a storyline inside of the city of Essenwald, which is outside of the borders of the Vorrh. It's like a European town transported, like almost literally, to Africa outside of this forest. And a young woman goes into a house that she's not supposed to go into and discovers a man who is a cyclops. And then interspersed throughout all of this is a historical fiction retelling of Edward Muybridge's life. And it doesn't seem connected at all to the Vorrh, except that he meets a woman who is African and is probably giving subtle hints that she is connected to the forest, but it was very subtle. The one thing about this book is that it is very well written. It's weird, there are some uncomfortable, gross, gruesome, disturbing bits in it, and at times it was also just beautiful to read. I don't know if I actually liked it. I enjoyed parts of it, I was repulsed by parts of it, and it's projected to be part of a series, so if the second or third books ever come out, I will probably pick them up and read them. I hope that the stuff in this book makes more sense in the context of a larger series. I'm guessing that's what's gonna happen, but for right now, I'm confused. A not confusing thing that I read this past week was Ms. Marvel Volume 4, Last Days by G. Willow Wilson with art by Adrienne Alfona. This is about a teenage Pakistani American girl who becomes Ms. Marvel. She gets superhero powers, and then she does superhero things like saving the world and her friends and her family, and meets other Marvel characters. I quite enjoyed this, but I didn't love it as much as I've loved the first couple of trade volumes I read, probably because while I appreciate Kamala Khan as a character, as a Pakistani and a Muslim character, which is, I think, really important in the series, and that it's quite well written, the shiny newness has worn off and I'm just settling into the middle part of the story now. I know nothing about the wider Marvel universe. I'm not that interested in it, so I'm hoping that this continues to be more focused on Kamala and her friends and family in future volumes. Probably won't happen, but we will see. I will keep reading. Next, I read books 8 and 9 in the Vlad Taltos series by Stephen Brust. This is a fantasy series following an assassin character in a world populated by elves and humans. Book 8 is Dragon, and it's kind of a flashback to a previous adventure when Vlad gets caught up in a war and actually being a soldier in a war at the Battle of Barrett's Tomb. I wasn't really interested in the story of this one. The way that it is written was cool. Every chapter begins with a present day Vlad telling you what he is currently doing during the battle, and then quickly segues back to prior events. And every chapter is a little bit farther in the future and catches you up just a little bit more. I think you probably need a diagram to understand how that works time-wise. It wasn't confusing at all. It just was very interesting, and I think the way that Brust structures the stories, the thing that he does with chapters, that there are supposed to be 17 books in the series, and there are 17 chapters in all the books, and there are 17 animals, like all the titles of the books are these animals, which are the houses of the J.R.R. and stuff, and every animal has a personality trait that is associated with the house and the people who belong to that house. I like the structure and how Brust tells the stories, and that was really obvious in this one. It seems that I am never as interested in the flashback stories that go farther back in the timeline in between some of the earlier books. I just never seem to care about them that much. I much prefer the stories that continue with the main storyline when Vlad is significantly changing. The one thing though at this point when you're reading in publication order, when you flip between the future Vlad and the past Vlad, is you can really see that he has evolved as a character. Issola, the 9th book, is set in that primary future timeline where Vlad is older, more mature, and more cautious. The story is about Vlad being asked to find or rescue his friends Morlan and Alyra, yes it is Alyra, from the House of Dragon who have gone missing, and this pulls him into meeting some of the more fantastic alien characters, a different species who are kind of in conflict with the gods of the J.R.R. Empire and the J.R.R. and humans, which is an interesting development that creates more conflict and depth in this series. The complexities of the gods and the actual nature of a god is discussed in this book, and I enjoyed those parts. I also really think that in these two books, in Dragon and Issola, Brust's writing is just stronger. I have had a lot of trouble with his dialogue and how kind of cheesy it felt, but it seems to be better in these two books, and the snarky comments from Vlad and his pet Jerrig were a lot easier. They were actually funny to me in parts, and I'm starting to get more of the ongoing jokes. The last thing that I read this week was a beautiful, haunting book, The City Not Long After by Pat Murphy. This is like a fantasy, slightly magical realism book set after a plague has wiped out most of the population in America, and the world is transformed. People are starting to recover, to build new ways of living, a new society, but a new generation is emerging. It's 16 years later, so there are now people, adults running around who don't remember the prior world. A group of artists live in and control San Francisco. There is a man named General Vorrh who is trying to bring back America. He's trying to conquer all the cities and bring people back in the fold, and so he has a military dictatorship, and if you don't agree to be part of his regime, then he will kill you, he will fight you. A young nameless woman comes to San Francisco. Her mother may have something to do with the initial spread of the plague, and when she dies, she wants her daughter to come to San Francisco and warn them that this General Vorrh is coming to finally attack San Francisco, and the artists have to prepare and decide how they want to fight him, and their method is not the same as General Vorrh's. I really felt that this was about the non-violent protest against the brute force mentality of someone like General Vorrh, and Murphy captures the essence of what she's going for. She writes characters and setting and atmosphere so well. It's a very slim book, and it was amazing the entire way through. I was constantly reminded of Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel while reading this. There are a lot of broad similarities. I wouldn't call Station 11 magical realism. That's more a science fiction, literary science fiction, whereas this has definitely got some fantastical magical elements, but there's some pretty big similarities. They're set after a plague with the next generation, people who can't remember the world before, but also it focuses a lot on artists. Station 11 follows people in a theater group who are performing Shakespeare's plays, and this follows people who are more like doing installation and performance art in an urban area, but there were enough similarities. I would say if you have enjoyed Station 11, you should pick up this book because I think you will really like it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having a great weekend. If you're here in the United States, it is a long weekend for Memorial Day, so I hope you have fun if you have any plans. I don't. I'm just gonna sleep in and watch a lot of booktube videos and try to read a lot. But yes, enjoy yourselves, and I will talk to you again soon. And until then, bye.